Welcome to our video series, Leader Standard Work, Tips and Tricks. This is our third series. We covered the topics of value stream mapping and A3 storyboards in the first two. If you haven't seen them, please check them out. Leader Standard Work is a tool that arose out of a very real need. For years, we have struggled with getting leaders to perform the various activities that make up the lean management system. We will take a look at that system shortly. In general, the activities involve a leader engaging their natural work teams in continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is the real objective of lean. The idea of Leader Standard Work arose as a way to overcome the resistance and real struggle that was encountered. It is really a recently developed tool, unlike many lean tools that date back decades. For nearly 15 years, I've been working with leaders in various industries to apply the tool to help them make lean an integral part of their daily, weekly, let's just say an integral part of their regular routine. Over the years, I learned a lot about Leader Standard Work, what it should include, and how best to go about creating it. In this first episode, I will review what Leader Standard Work is and sharing numerous tips and tricks about its content. In episode 2, I will review the process of creating Leader Standard Work that I have found to be most effective. Tips and tricks will be provided drawing on years of struggle with the application of the tool. To be forthcoming, I have found it a real challenge to get leaders to put forth the effort to develop their Leader Standard Work and stick with it. I probably have a 70% success rate when creating it from scratch, which is just an okay rate. If you too have experienced similar struggles, you may find help in the various tips and tricks provided in this series. So let's get started. First, let's define standard work. This definition will serve our purpose. It is the best known way to effectively, efficiently, and safely perform an activity. Any activity, even leading. Standard work can be applied to the multitasking nature of a leader's role. Why leader standard work? As I mentioned in the introduction, it has been a real challenge getting leaders to perform the various activities expected of them in a lean enterprise. Leader standard work can help create a routine for a leader in whatever role they have, until that time that the routine becomes a habit. And let's admit it, we all can use some help creating new habits. Now let's discuss more specifically about the activities that leaders are expected to perform. Here is a model for a lean management system. I often refer to it as an engine for continuous improvement. As with any engine, it needs fuel to keep running. Fuel in the form of opportunities for improvement is supplied by the various activities that make up the lean management system. Leaders throughout the organization will be involved in all these activities at some level. Some will be performed daily, others periodically. The activities are listed around the box towards the center of the figure. They include strategic planning. A leader can be involved in developing the strategy or at least executing it over the next year or beyond. How will the leader support the strategic plan? Daily management. A leader must frequently review recent past performance and review upcoming goals and objectives. Further, they should do so with their natural work teams. What information should a leader cover during these typically daily interactions? Further, such daily interactions are usually part of a tiered management system. How will that system work? How will a leader engage his or her natural work teams? Engagement is the key. How will a leader continually stimulate ideas for improvement? What will be the process to follow through on selected ideas? Next, and-on. Leaders will need to quickly respond to particular issues that need immediate attention and cannot wait for the daily management process to address. This is the purpose of an and-on system. What will be the leader's role in that system? Of course, going to the Gemba will be a major part of any leader's role in the lean enterprise. As we always say when doing a go-see activity, the leader should have a purpose and he or she should not go see alone. The focus of a Gemba walk can be 5S, to verify that it is being sustained. The focus can be on waste, to identify waste in a process. Yet another focus will be to observe existing standard work in an area. Leaders do this not just to confirm that people are following established standard work, but to maintain awareness and engage team members. At what frequency will the leader perform these various go-see activities? How should each be performed? Maintaining customer focus is a key concept of Lean. How will the leader obtain and share important information from customers, what we call voice of the customer, both internal and external, with their team members? Finally, periodic improvement efforts will take place in the leader's area of responsibility. What role will they play in these? As a participant, as a supporter? What goals will leaders set as a target for such efforts? The answer to all of these questions must be defined and can be as part of the leader's standard work. These activities are not simply a list of boxes that will be quote-unquote checked off by the leader. Each activity has a deeper purpose. They provide a leader with an opportunity to be a role model and to demonstrate what is called servant leadership. Further, they all represent teaching and learning opportunities for everyone involved. And very important, they represent the means to develop and maintain an environment of trust. This is why that the leader must not only perform each activity, but to perform them in desirable ways. Initially, I and another colleague who is also struggling with getting leaders to perform the various activities that are part of the Lean management system looked to a multitasking version of standard work as a possible tool. Early on, it included only those activities that could be categorized as improving the business activities. In short time, we ran into another obstacle. Leaders kept saying, we don't have time for these tasks, the improving the business activities. I quickly learned that when creating leader standard work from scratch, as was typically the case, it must include all significant activities, those in support of running the business, doing whatever is necessary to meet the daily demands of the business, as well as improving the business, the various activities that make up the Lean management system. This would provide a more complete picture of a leader's role. I came to realize that many managers were unaware of everything that their direct reports did. Without this more complete awareness, a manager will more likely to push more and more work onto their folks, not realizing that at times they were creating unreasonable expectations of their people. And of course, those leaders on the receiving end of the pushing did not usually speak up. Rather, they would accept more and more work. The result was the leader couldn't adequately perform all the duties that were expected of him or her, as well as frustration on the part of all parties involved. With all activities of substance included, a true plan for a leader in whatever role he or she has can be developed. Then over time, the leader's actual activities can be compared to the plan, as we will discuss shortly. Leader standard work must be tailored to a leader's particular role. I have seen organizations try to apply a one-size-fits-all approach to leader standard work. However, roles can vary substantially, so I do not know how a one-size-fits-all approach can work. Now, leaders who perform similar roles, such as production supervisors covering different shifts, leader standard work can be very similar, if not exactly the same. So a plan for activities that the leader is expected to do, the frequency that each activity is to be performed, specific times to perform particular tasks can all be laid out. Then the leader can compare his or her actual activities to the plan. This is really the essence of standard work. Standard work provides a plan for a process against which the actual steps that a person is following can be compared. Any differences should trigger reflection and possible correction or maybe improvement. The same concept and practice can be applied to the multitasking nature of leader standard work. Why couldn't the leader perform a task at a prescribed time or at all? Why is a task taking longer than identified? These are just a few examples. Possible improvements in one's leader standard work might include identifying a more convenient time to perform a particular activity. Perhaps the time expected to perform it should be adjusted. Maybe the manner in which an activity is performed must be changed. Later in this episode, we'll talk about non-standard ways of performing an activity. Recurring causes of interruptions should be identified and addressed. You'll hear me mention this several times throughout the two-part series. Unscheduled meetings convened at the last minute are one example. Interruptions of a particular nature often relate to a leader's role. For example, a maintenance manager identified frequent downtime of equipment as a recurring interruption. In another situation, a purchasing manager identified unscheduled visits by vendors as a frequent interruption. An early learning in the application of leader standard work is the manner in which particular activities are performed is equally important as the fact that they are performed at all. As with standard work, it must include what we call key points. Key points capture how to perform a task where it matters. Key points typically have three categories: safety, quality, and efficiency. The manner in which an activity is to be performed safely and ensuring the proper quality outcome must be defined. The manner in which an activity is to be performed in a proven, efficient way must also be defined. These activities, including those as part of the lean management system, are too important to leave it up to everyone to figure out for him or herself. For example, leaders should perform a 5S audit, a common activity in leader standard work. They should do so in a consistent way, regardless of role. The time it takes to properly perform it may vary based on the leader's area of responsibility, but how it is performed should be consistent, involving team members from the area, using a checklist designed for the purpose, how to follow up, etc. These aspects should be standardized. Let's use daily huddles as another example. What different leaders cover during this important activity can vary based on role. But each huddle should have an agenda, a time frame to cover the agenda, visual management devices developed to support this activity. These aspects should be standardized. In fact, every meeting type activity should have an agenda, a set time frame, a typically very brief checklist of items needed to prepare prior to a meeting, so that it is performed in the most effective and efficient way. In addition to key points for particular activities, leader standard work should include the various tools that a leader uses to perform these tasks expected of him or her. 5S audit forms, wastewalk forms, checklists, and other tools should also be included as part of leader standard work. Think of leader standard work as a playbook and not a single-page checklist or daily schedule of things to do. It is more than that. Beyond the tools and schedule of activities, it can also include separate standard work for particular activities that are more involved. In other words, more steps or key points. I often ask a leader, were you given a playbook when you took on your job, your current position? The response is almost always no. If you were given a playbook, I would ask, a playbook as I'm describing, would it have helped you? The response is almost always a form of heck yeah. Such a playbook would certainly help a person settle into a routine in any new role. Beyond that, it helps the person be more assured of doing all that is expected of them in their role over time. Perhaps in time, many months at the very least, the required habits will form. It can be argued that the benefits of leader standard work will diminish after those habits are formed. But let's not worry about that until that time. Here's an example of leader standard work. It is really just a portion of one. A real one may have as many as 24 activities, as well as the tools, separate standard work that I had mentioned a moment ago. Nonetheless, we will use it to make a few points. It contains the activities that this manager, a customer service manager, is expected to perform, the frequency and scheduled time for particular activities, and the time required to perform each activity. In addition, beyond a simple list of activities, each one has key points noted to better ensure that they are properly performed over time. For example, task number 2 involves a Gemba walk focused on waste. It is to be performed weekly on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. The leader should select a team member to participate on the walk. Such activities are learning and teaching opportunities. It also doesn't hurt to have a second set of eyes. A waste walk form should be used. It is also noted to identify 1 or 2 observations for follow-up and improvement. Task number 7 involves a one-on-one activity where the manager meets with his or her customer service representatives, in this case, every 2 weeks. The manager will meet with 4 reps, one at a time, on Wednesdays, between the hours of 1 to 3 o'clock. A form designed for this important activity is to be used. Another key point is that the manager should prepare the day before so that the one-on-one session is performed properly. This example also includes running the business activities, which number 6 represents, task number 6, and improving the business activities, such as task number 8. Now, not all activities require a specific time that it is to be completed. In fact, some activities should not be so precisely scheduled. Take task number 3, for example. It involves a 5S audit. The leader will perform this activity with 2 team members using a form designed for this purpose. Opportunities for improvement may be identified, and if so, will be followed up on. It is scheduled on the first Friday of each month at 11 a.m. Scheduling a 5S audit this time means the leader will only learn how organized or disorganized the area is performing at 11 a.m. on the first Friday of each month. In reality, we wouldn't want to perform this activity at the same time every time. The leader should vary the timing. That is why there is an X on task number 4, a collaborative process observation activity. The leader will select some standard work that is performed in their area of responsibility from a visual management device designed for this purpose. They will select a team member who performs the standard work to observe. Any gaps from the defined standard work may lead to process improvement, additional training, or even updating the existing standard work. However, the leader shouldn't try to precisely time this observation. Perhaps they need more flexibility. The X means that the leader is committing to performing this activity once a month at a time that can vary. Now, we are not trying to account for every minute of every day. Some organizations or individuals have felt the need to do this. This is not our intent. A common question I receive is, how much detail should I include? Should I note when I check email? I usually respond with a question. I don't know, do you have difficulties presently with your email? If so, perhaps including it in your leader standard work may help you. If not, I wouldn't worry about it. Again, we are not trying to account for every minute of every day. I have had individuals do their leader standard work in an Excel spreadsheet with calculations and summaries of the total time that is required of them. This is not our intent. Again, the document shown on the previous slide will be part of the playbook that we described earlier, probably the cover sheet of the playbook. Separate standard work for particular activities, forms, and the like will make up the rest of the playbook. Together, they form a complete leader standard work for the particular role that a leader is expected to fulfill. That brings episode 1 to a close. Some key points covered include leader standard work is more than a simple checklist of activities. It is more than a schedule of activities. If that is all it was, simply use Outlook or some other calendar type software. And I've had people try to do that. As I mentioned, the how each activity is performed is as important as performing it. Therefore, key points for each activity must be included. This will better assure that each activity is performed properly in the most safe, efficient, and effective way over time. Leader standard work should include all key activities that the leader is expected to perform, those that are performed to run the business and to improve the business. This will give a more complete picture of the leader's role. One of the benefits of leader standard work that people have conveyed to me is that they feel their boss has a better appreciation of what they do. I'll take that any day. Finally, leader standard work, the PlayBook, should include standard work for specific activities, as well as the tools that the leaders should use to perform particular activities, checklists, forms, whatever the tools are. When it's all said and done, leader standard work will define the what, when, and how a leader is to go about performing their role. One of the key benefits of leader standard work that I most often hear is that the leader feels a greater sense of control over their work environment, that it is less chaotic and frustrating, and that they feel a greater sense of accomplishment each day. These are important benefits indeed. I hope that you found the content in this episode helpful. In episode 2, we'll provide tips and tricks for the process of creating leader standard work. I hope that you will join us.